President.
The senator from Louisiana.
Mr. President, 20 years ago this month, Hurricane Rita hit Louisiana, and 1 year ago tomorrow, Hurricane Francine hit Louisiana. Now, this is damage from Hurricane Francine in Morgan City and in Metairie. And our state gets ready. We're prepared. We stockpile gasoline for generators. We get water, food, medication, and if necessary, board up windows. We secure our pets and our livestock. A friend of mine sent a video showing how she was preparing her pig's pen for the storm, so she had to take care of her pig. So I won't say we're casual. No, we're very alert, but we've also learned to be calm. But let me point out, when Hurricane Francine made landfall on the 11th, people in Assumption, Lafourche, St. Charles, St. James, St. John the Baptist, St. Mary, and Terrebonne parishes and others had significant flooding. Now, thankfully, no lives were lost, but a lot of damage occurred. Homes flooded, some ruined entirely. Many lost power. In total, Hurricane Francine caused more than $1.5 billion in damage across Louisiana. Now, because of that, I have spent the last year making sure that my state receives every federal resource possible, first for recovery and next for mitigation. One example of recovery aid, I was pleased to announce a $118 million grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development specifically for Hurricane Francine relief. But you know what's even better than recovery? Not flooding in the first place. As they say, a stitch in time saves nine, or a levee can prevent millions of dollars worth of damage. There was a report from the National Institute of Building Science that $1 invested in preventing flooding can save up to $6 in flood damage. In President Trump's first administration, he created a program called Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities, or BRIC for short, and it provided many life-saving grants that Louisiana benefited from. Now, this administration, second Trump, has held up some of the money, but I've been assured by OMB Director Russ Vogt that they're going to release those funds. Through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, I've secured over $10 billion for Louisiana, and a lot of that has been for flood mitigation. And just weeks after Hurricane Francine, announced a separate grant of $206 million for elevating flood-prone homes in Orleans, Calcasieu, East Baton Rouge, and Lafayette parishes, and a lot in between. And also $1.5 million for the Louisiana Department of Public Safety for emergency protective measures taking care of Hurricane Francine. And then another $1.5 million in May. Now, Mr. President, in the past, I've discussed some of the worst floods in our state's history: Milton, Helene, Laura, Ida, and Katrina. I've spoken about flooding in Texas, New Mexico, and New York. This is not just a Louisiana problem, it's a Florida problem. It is from this you can see, a national problem. With the dark yellow being states that have had significant flooding, over $1 billion in National Flood Insurance Program claims, with the lighter tan states being those that had over $50 million in claims. So every flood is a little bit different, but the message I always emphasize is the same. Americans need stability, and right now that stability is being threatened. The National Flood Insurance Program, also called NFIP, has provided Americans with access to affordable flood insurance for the last 50 years. Now, as we go now towards a government shutdown, if Congress doesn't act, if the government is not funded, the National Flood Insurance Program lapses, leaving the nearly 500,000 Louisianians and over 5 million Americans without coverage. Now, hurricane season won't be over for 2 more months. Where does that leave the elderly folks in Calcasieu Parish, or the young couple buying their first home in St. Charles Parish, or the single mom in St. Bernard Parish providing for her child, living paycheck to paycheck? We cannot let a congressional funding fight keep them from receiving the coverage they need. And by the way, even if Congress averts a shutdown, we're not yet in the clear, we need a long-term solution. Congress has already passed 33 short-term extensions in the last 10 years. 33. Sounds kind of like a Saturday Night Live skit. So, Mr. President, I think we can all agree that a program which has been extended 33 times is worth reauthorizing long-term. And don't you think that Congress should protect a program helping millions of Americans from California through New Mexico all the way up to New York and of course including my home state of Louisiana? Now, I haven't spoken to every single homeowner in America or Louisiana enrolled in the NFIP, but I can imagine they're all wondering, why can't government get its act together? It's irresponsible for Congress to continue to make families hold their breath and hope the rug will not be pulled out from beneath them. That's a pattern that should end. To do so, we must be sure that the government is funded so that NFIP survives September. We then need to pass a long-term extension so that NFIP policyholders can rely on the program to do what it's supposed to do, provide stability. Let's keep the National Flood Insurance Program alive, and then let's keep it strong, reliable, and worthy of the trust that millions of American families place in it every day. Mr. President, in this, we've talked about recovery from hurricanes. We've talked about how to prevent flooding, which is to say, make it so that you don't have to recover because you've already built resiliency. And we've talked about the work that must be done for those on the National Flood Insurance Program. And right now, with that promise of protection hanging in the balance, I'm calling once more for stability, for certainty. A program that millions rely on, and 500,000 in Louisiana alone, should not be held hostage by short-term funding battles. We've seen what happens when the water rises. We've seen the damage. We've seen the need. Let's act now so that when the next storm comes, families don't have to wonder whether their coverage will be there. And with that, I yield.
During remarks on the Senate floor Wednesday, Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican Louisiana, spoke about the National Flood Insurance Program and the ongoing challenges Louisiana faces with hurricanes and flooding. He recalled that 20 years ago, Hurricane Rita struck the state, and just 1 year ago, Hurricane Francine caused widespread flooding across multiple parishes, including Ascension, Assumption, St. Charles, St. Mary, and others. While no lives were lost during Francine, the storm caused more than $1.5 billion in damages, with homes destroyed, communities flooded, and power outages that lasted for days. Cassidy described how Louisiana families prepare for storms by stockpiling food, water, medication, and fuel for generators, boarding up windows, and even securing their pets and livestock. He emphasized that residents are not casual about hurricanes, but instead stay alert and calm. To aid recovery, he announced that the state had received a $118 million grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and additional funds for elevating flood-prone homes and providing emergency protection measures. The senator highlighted that prevention is more cost-effective than recovery, pointing to studies showing that $1 spent on flood prevention can save $6 in damages. He credited programs like Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, which was started under President Trump, for providing Louisiana with grants that strengthen levees and reduce risk. Cassidy noted that Louisiana has secured more than $10 billion in federal support for flood mitigation, including $26 million to elevate homes and $1.5 million to support emergency response efforts. Cassidy stressed that flooding is not just a Louisiana problem, but a national one, affecting states from California to New York. He warned that the stability of the National Flood Insurance Program, which provides affordable coverage to millions, is at risk. Nearly 500,000 people in Louisiana and over 5 million nationwide rely on the program, but it could lapse if Congress fails to act during a potential government shutdown. He criticized Congress for passing 33 short-term extensions of the NFIP over the past decade, arguing that families should not be left wondering if their coverage will disappear in the middle of hurricane season. Cassidy urged lawmakers to secure long-term reauthorization to give Americans the stability they need, saying the program must remain strong, reliable, and worthy of the trust placed in it. He closed by calling for immediate action, warning that families who have seen the devastation of flooding should not also face uncertainty about their insurance coverage.